Hello minions! Welcome back to the channel, Devil Drive here, and we're back on our second tutorial. Now this one's going to be concentrating on lakes, rivers and waterfalls. Now before we get started, the map you're looking at right now is made by a guy called Coolspoon, and it's named Anarchy Town. It's a great little death match. You can tell he's put a lot of work into these mountains and rivers and waterfalls here. Really nice work. I love what he's done with the texturing, with the hills and the trees and intertwined in there. So check it out, give it some love. Now let's get started. The first thing you need to do is make sure that you've got a rough idea of what you want, as in like an area of a map. So you choose your palette accordingly. Now just get a couple of paints in there, and then what you want to do is basically do this. You just outline the area of the river in paint. That will give you an idea of kind of roughly what you want, what shape it's going to be. Now this can change, so if you want to add little bits or take bits away, that's fine. It's good to get an outline now before you start digging, because it's easier to take the paint away than it is to, you know, flatten everything out and get it looking nice again. So after you've got the rough shape and you've got a little bit of paint down as a riverbed, you can go in there with this tool. This is raise and lower. What this does is it lowers a section or raises a section without losing any of the angles on there. So if you've got a steep hill, for example, you can raise that entire section up and keep the hill in place at the same angle. So doing this gives you a nice little kind of a feathered effect at the bottom here. You can see it's all kind of bumpy and lumpy, and it should look like a little bit like this. Now the next thing is to put the water in. Now you can do this in two ways. You can use the ocean effect, which I'm using now. The only problem is it takes a little while to catch up with the water level that you set it at, so be warned. And it also raises the water level for the entire map, so everything in that map will be at that level. You will also have a bit around the edge, which you can just about make out, that you'll kind of be stuck with unless you hide it, or unless it's a water map. If you're making a ship at sea or something like that, it's fine. Really good way of doing it. So that's one way of doing it. If you want something a little bit more in depth, you can use these things. These are lakes. Now in options, you've got customizable custom properties. You can make it wider and longer. You can also change the water type here as well. So what this does is it allows you to use multiple different lakes to create different levels. So if you want to make a lock system, for example, or a waterfall, which I'm going to be doing in a minute, you can have a high level of water and then a lower level of water, and you can use quite a few of these, so you can stack them all together and have lots of like cascading waterfalls if you like. Now when you're picking the water level, the water type, sorry, I'm going to go with a pretty generic water, just so that you can see what I'm doing. And like this, you can see underneath it, so that's why I'm using this particular type, just for tutorial purposes. If I was making a proper map, it would be a lot faster flowing or rougher, kind of depending on what parts I'm using. Now you can even cut this into sections and have like a row of rocks cut in, so you can have a different type of effect as the water goes down. Now this bit, if you are lowering a water section, make sure it's overlapping like that, and then you can concentrate on the bottom bit. The reason we have it overlapping is because it's a lot easier to hide those front parts. And once you've got the rough kind of shape to it and the rough height, you can then go over with smooth, just to get the edges down a little bit. This is going to be a common thing, and hopefully the riverbed should look a little bit like this. A little flat, a little lumpy in parts, but it's up to you guys. It depends on what type of river you're making, what area it's going to be in. Some are going to be faster flowing, so they might be a bit smoother. Some will be a little bit more slower moving, so they'll be bumpier, more detritus over the floor. And once you've done that, you can go over with erosion. Now erosion, we ain't going to lose that a lot in this build, but what it does at this stage of the game is it gives the bank a little bit of definition. Because afterwards, after we go with smooth again on the top of this and raise, these divots here that you can see, they're going to be still there but less prominent, so it'll give it a little bit of texture. So at this point you could probably go in there and give it a little bit more paint You'll find that in my maps what I tend to do is paint periodically. I do a little bit of the building, I do a little bit of painting, then I do some more build, and I do a little bit more paint. By doing that, it layers the paint up in different ways, so that by the time you finish, you've got layer upon layer upon layer of paint that's just slightly coming through, so you end up with a slightly more realistic look. Now, once you've done this, if the bank is too high, you could use this tool again. This is raise and lower, and this is what I mean earlier when I was saying it raises and lowers sections of the map without losing the inclines. So you can lower, in this case, the bank without losing any of the inclines or the bank bit itself. All it does is literally lowers the land around it. And once you've done that, why not put some foliage in it? It's nearly done. It's about halfway through now, so when I like to put some foliage in, I'll put some trees around the outside, get some plants in there just around the outside. And this particular one here, this is Grass Mountain Watergrass 2. Now what this does is it puts down foliage that is, well, it's basically grass, but it's watergrass. So you'll find things like bulrushes in there. There's twigs, like detritus that are like driftwood in there. You've also got a big load of rocks that appear like that. It's a great one to use for riverbeds, and especially around the outside of it. So once you've done that, pick some rocks that are fit in with the area that you're making. So in this case, I'm using these moss covered rocks because I'm using the jungle. And once you've done that, you rack them around the place. Now in add new objects, go into nature, audio and visual effects. And there's the effects. These are all the different cool things you can do. There's the water effects. Now what these do is there's loads of different types. They go from dripping like this to things that work above the water, certain things that work below the water, and some do both. They work above and below the water, like this in this case. This one is a big splash. This works obviously above the water as a big splash and an even bigger splash, but if you put it below the water, you get this effect. Now this is really good for making the water seem like it's fast flowing, especially when it's just a lake and it's stood still like this. So what you could do is pick the kind of ones that you want to do, what you want to use rather. Make sure they're set aside so you know where they are, and then you can grab the ones that you want. And this one I'm using now is the Waterfall Military Base Bridge Splash. It's quite a long one. I use this one just to sink into the water to get the fast flowing river effect, especially on waterfalls like this. Because you don't want a really fast, in this case I don't want a really fast flowing river, but you could do that if you wanted to with this effect. So make sure there's one at the top because the water rushes over the waterfalls, and then there's some at the bottom because obviously it rushes in and out from the waterfall. And then once you've done that, you can get these little splash effects and just pop them around any rocks around the place. Just make sure that the splash is peaking up just a little bit, and that the river, the rushing of the river flows in the right direction. What that does is it gives this effect that the river's flowing and hitting these rocks as it's flowing, making splash. And then you've got these little driplets that I love to use these things. These little drips, they just give that little extra sort of like something to it. And once you've done that, you can get these big fellas in. Now again with the waterfall large splash, this is the top, so I use this obviously for the top of the waterfall. And then you just place these around as you see fit, trying to make sure that you're blending in with the rocks, and you should end up with something like this. So now it's time to decorate. Now you've got your rough idea of what your area should be looking like now, so try and pick anything that's like the foliage that kind of fits the area. In this case, lily pads, they fit everywhere. You can do anything with these, so I like to use these little lily pads. There are some floating petals as well, white ones. They kind of looked a little bit out of place, so just grab a load of these, whack them together, grab the whole group, and then just move them around, just dot them around the place. Now this is very subtle, but it looks great. So after you've done that, that's pretty much it then. You can build your little jetties or your things that are going out of there. You put some people in there, in some guy taking a pee. By the looks of, yep, he's having a whiz in my lovely lake. So you can put some dead things in it. In this case, it's a dead crocodile. And there you go, guys, there's your lake. You can finish it off by putting some fish and ducks and wildlife around. If you do place them, make sure you place them above the waterline that you can see in the middle there. That way they'll fall when the map starts, because it can be a bit glitchy. Your waterfall and your river. Now, like I say, it all depends on how you're building your map. If you've got a big map, you want a big river, just take your time, don't rush it. Or a lot of people rush things like this. Just go easy, take your time, and I'll show you a few little cool tricks at the end. If you don't want to use your paint specifically just for this, then there's some little tricks I'll show you in a minute. But this is basically what you should end up with. After you've done it, go around the edge, just take out some of the foliage, just tweak it, just make sure it looks nicer. I've left some of the rocks in, but I've taken out some of the grass. So there are these blank bits. You've got your different types, you've got all your bulrushes in the bottom here. I've put that along the edge of the water because they're water grass. I mean, that's where they would not naturally grow. You've got your little flowers in the foreground on the bank. I've got the rocks, and I've got the bulrushes in the water itself where they would naturally grow. So try to place them in places where you think, though, this would be growing here. And there you go. Now these effects, I mean, it's not perfect. I could spend a lot more time on it, but it works for every type of lake, river, or waterfall. So these tricks that I was told you, if you don't want to spend ages, right, as you can see, I've got all these different paints just for my river. Now you're going to build other stuff. You're going to build mountains, and you're going to build like all different types of things. If you don't want to use your paint for this, you can use a road. So to put an embankment around a sink, in this case a lake, just place a muddy road. Mud path 2 I'm using in this case. So you place that all the way around. The great thing about using this trick is that you can have, I think is like 12 different types of roads that you can use, as opposed to 4 different types of paint. So you can use this a lot, and this works for everything. It works for coastlines, it works for all sorts of different things. If you want to put like a little beachy coastline, a small one granted, but you've got sand that you can use, a sand road, you can use that. So just place it around, and then you can widen it. That's the secret. And then you just place it in there, pick up the little dots, move them around to make it look as much like a muddy bank as you can. And you can use gravel roads, you can use anything that you want really, as long as it looks good. I mean, if it looks good, it doesn't really matter what it is, if it's in keeping with the type of map that you got, because you don't want anything to stand out. This place is going to be a kind of a muddy jungle, so I'm going to be wanting muddy banks. So there you go. The only problem with this effect is you cannot paint on it. So you can't paint foliage like grasses on it like this. It stops. Okay, but that could be a good thing. I use this technique a lot in my maps. It's nice that, I mean, things won't grow on a bank anyway, so it's quite nice to use that sort of stuff. And there you go, guys. That's a little trick that I love to use. It's one of my favorite tricks. If you don't want to use roads, there's other things you can use as well. There's decals that are specifically designed for this kind of thing. You can get these little fellas. These are, in this case, there's lots of different types. This is a decal. It's a gravel mud water puddle, basically. It's a muddy puddle. But if you can put them on the side of the banks, it makes it look like something slid into the bank, or something's trying to slide out, or you can link them together like this and create a muddied bank effect. And I really do like this effect. It looks just great when you're up close to it. The only problem it is a decal, so it does take up a little bit of your memory, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope those techniques helped a lot. I really hope that people can get something out of these tutorials that I'm doing. I learned something a little bit new that they haven't learnt before. I do these things because I've been doing them for a long time, and people keep constantly asking me, oh, how do you get this effect? How do you get that effect? So I figured I'll just make a little series of small tutorials and show you my little secrets and tricks that I use. There are a lot of other map makers out there that are way better than me. As you can see, this guy here in this map, he's just done some amazing things with caves and the waterfalls in the caves. It looks really, really good. Incidentally, this was made by a guy called Flying Spiritus. This map is called Crying the Castle. You can download this right now. It's up online. It's a lovely, lovely little first person, single player action kind of based map. It's really, really nicely done. Everything in it was just beautifully. He's clearly spent a long time doing this. So that's it from me. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If there's anything that I missed or anything that you want to see in the future, please leave a comment. Feedback's always grateful. Anything that you want to see me do in further tutorials, anything you've been having issues with, anything that I've helped you with. If I've helped you with something, that sort of stuff makes my day. If you leave a comment, I'll be really grateful. Also, leave a like, share, subscribe if you wanna. And as always, I will see you on the respawn.